Vargas will speak first.
America is a very generous country. Nations all over the world owe gratitude to her. She has sent us money, machines, aid under every possible form. And now, in addition to all that, she has given 32 students from 32 countries a mind-stretching experience which none of us shall ever forget. As a matter of fact, America is more used to hear thank you than to say thank you herself. We ourselves have said thousands, and we, no more than the countries which have accepted your help, do not like to be always on the receiving end. And we wonder what gifts we could make to you. I notice that the next speaker will maintain that asking questions is the source of democracy. Perhaps our best gift to you will be to tell you some of the questions we have been asking ourselves for the last 3 months when we compare the way of living to which we are used with what we have seen here. Naturally, we do not pretend to be big experts about America after 12 weeks in that country. But if there is one thing on which we can speak without too much incompetence, it is your high schools, because we know them by experience. Since January the 1st, we have been going to 5 different high schools, 5 days a week. We have gone to those high schools one after the other. And if we ever thought, while we were chosen, that we were going to enjoy 3 months of leisurely holiday, I can tell you it did not take us very long to understand we were mistaken. Since the very first moment we arrived in the schools, we began speaking 8 hours a day, answering questions, innumerable questions. Everything from, do you have any snow in Switzerland? Or would you please speak a little Swiss? To how do you reconcile Swiss neutrality with your responsibility as a European towards the EDC? This last question was asked by a student of the junior high school, by the way, which isn't too bad for him. As a matter of fact, we were challenged by so many people who wanted to ask us questions, to show us things, to take us places, that I think we pretty soon all wish to be gifted with ubiquity.
Many people asked me, have you been to Chinatown in New York? And I said, why? And they said, because it's very much like Japan. And I asked, how did you know? Now, I think not knowing about somebody else or another country is all right. But if you think you know and really don't know, that's dangerous.
American students asked me what we do about sports in my country. I said we play them. but I appreciated it very much when students who have only been given the chance to hear the Jewish side of our trouble with Israel asked me to tell them the Arab side.
People always mix me, a girl from Bangkok, Thailand, up with the dancers from Bali. They ask me whether I can move my head back and forth, da 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 da, like this.
I come from Norway. I didn't quite know what to answer when somebody asked me if I knew a friend of his in Belgium. But I despaired still more when a boy in 7th grade asked me to give a brief survey of Norwegian architecture.
The greatest difference I think almost all of us have noticed between our high schools and yours is that our high schools prepare us for college, whereas your high schools prepare you for the life of an American citizen.
Actually, I think, at least in Jordan, that our high schools give us a more solid background in knowledge and culture. This makes it possible for a selected few to develop their individual gifts and talents. What happens is that our schools train a small group to become leaders, while American schools train all their students to be followers. And those who have the potential of leadership are often neglected. Our education is more thorough. We do not have elective subjects. We study in high school: Arabic, Greek and Arab philosophy, English, the history of civilization starting 4,000 years back and up to modern times, physics, chemistry, and mathematics, plus religion. We do not have any time to study in school. That means 4 hours of homework, at least.
In my high school in Norway, I have 15 different subjects, including 5 languages.
In Switzerland, I have 13 subjects at once, even more homework than Raja has. My school day begins at 8, ends at 5, and I go to school on Saturdays. But Raja, when you were speaking about the education of the elite, I instinctively thought of the others. What do you do about them? In Switzerland, and I think it is true almost all over Europe, we have 2 different sorts of schools, which run side by side. At 10, the children choose between the one which will lead them to college and the other one which will lead them towards non-professional work. The level of the latter is about the same as that of your high schools in this country.
But Philip, how is it possible for a 10-year-old to know whether he wants to study for a profession or not? In Norway, you don't have to make up your mind until you're 14.
In Japan, during the last war, I remember we were taught that we were fighting for the emperor. He was divine, just like a god. And our enemy didn't have such an emperor, our teacher said. So it was clear that we Japanese were right. Because patriotism and worship for the emperor were the same thing.
I certainly hate to think what might happen if one single man, like for instance Senator McCarthy, could control through the power of investigation how well history was taught in all high schools in America. I would still like more equal standards here, but maybe it's impossible with community control.
Girls in our country don't speak or laugh loudly. We are taught to speak softly and slowly. That is why when I first came to America, I found it difficult to speak before a big audience in a loud voice. The voice is one thing by which we judge the personality.
Perhaps one of the reasons for lack of discipline and concentration in American high schools is coeducation. Your natural instinct leads you to look away from a book and towards a beautiful girl.
Yes, but maybe when you see what's back of her face, you'll learn how to appreciate the beauty of the book.
In Japan, we have had co-education only since the war. That makes many problems for us. Parents say that girls behave like boys, but I don't agree. I think it's only when girls are together with boys that they are really ladylike.
It doesn't matter which system you have. The important thing is to have self-control.
School is a preparation for life. And in life, there are not different compartments for men and women. I don't see why we shouldn't learn how to understand one another in school already.
This is a very delicate point. See, the real essence of romance is uncertainty. When you understand a girl too well by seeing her every day in school, your interest in her would definitely decrease. A woman's mystery is her strongest attraction.
But co-education is not the essential difference that can be found between high schools in America and high schools in most other countries. The essential difference lies in purpose and methods. Americans don't use education only to impart knowledge. They also use it to develop a student's personality. I think this is the reason for so many clubs, practical subjects in school, and extracurricular activities.
Yes, but isn't it a little bit exaggerated to use so much of the day for other things than learning? For example, in a school I visited, they spent about 2 hours in the homeroom selling tickets for a basketball game.
Sometimes it has seemed to me that the school has taken over the role of the family in many respects. In Europe, school is a place to learn and nothing else. Home economics, bookkeeping, hygiene, car driving, typewriting, sex education. These are matters which are taught at home, or at least they should be taught at home. In America, the school seems to be the center of every part of the student's life. What happens to the family?
I also wonder what television is doing to the family at home. I think television is a wonderful invention. It's good for educational purposes. But I have the impression that in some families, it is having bad effect on family life. Maybe it can keep the family together at night, but does a family really need this artificial stimulus? I think television can keep parents and children away from talking and getting into real contact with each other. In Norwegian families, it's not at all unusual that parents and children can sit down and talk for hours together. Another question, does television make people passive? When you sit and watch television, you're just watching what other people have prepared for you. You don't create anything yourself. Also, television offers such a variety of impressions. On the television screen, there is always action. You switch from one station to another. You're always diverted. You never get a chance to concentrate. Little by little, you may forget what concentration is. I think there are some people here who are very dependent on entertainment because they forget how to entertain themselves, and so they are easily bored.
I think it is very important for children to have constructive and creative things to do. They have to be active and not just watch action. They have to let off steam. I think it is the responsibility of society to provide children with the means of letting off steam constructively. Otherwise, it may be faced with the problem of juvenile delinquency.
Maybe our students are sometimes a little too active. In our parts of the world, there are many times student riots and demonstrations of dissatisfaction. I think the point is that there is juvenile delinquency all over the world. The Americans, however, are dealing with the problem in a more constructive way than others.
To sum up our feelings about your school, I think that we can say that on both sides of the Atlantic, we have gone a little too far, but in opposite directions. We in Europe have given too much importance to form, to scholarly knowledge, and perhaps to the education of an elite. Whereas here in America, perhaps you have not put enough stress on discipline and too much stress on extracurricular activities, on sports, and on social life. I think that if we could strike a good middle term between the two tendencies, both our school systems could improve.
I want to say one more thing. School is a place where students should get something. In America, it has often seemed to me that the students are so eager to give their impressions, to discuss and to argue with the teacher in almost every point she brings up. In Thailand, we try more to listen to others. We are taught to think everything we speak, but not to speak everything we think.
But Tina, the purpose of progressive education in America is to take out of the student what the student has, not just to put in as much as the student can absorb.
Maybe in Asia we listen too much. Our orientation is toward the past. Yours is toward the future. Here is just one example. You give thanks before you eat a meal. We give thanks afterwards. I think we should not live either in the past or the future. The past is the lesson, the future is the dream, but we should live in the present with the influence of both. In Thailand, the influence of our traditions, our past, is very important to us. We prefer our classical art more than modern art because we think it is more beautiful and has more meaning. Our classical art is shown especially in our classical dances. Every slow movement is full of meaning, gracefulness, and leaves the viewer in deep thought of the beauty of it.
Since I come from Jordan, a land which has been one of the cradles of civilization, I am naturally very much concerned about the monuments of the past. When I came to America, I wanted to see your monuments and statues. I said to an American student, "Have you visited the Statue of Liberty?" He answered, to my amazement, "No." Then he went on to say, "When I feel the essence of a thing, I do not care to see its symbol. I would rather spend the money and the time involved in getting me there on somebody who is deprived of liberty so that I can help him getting it." This experience and another one in Washington, where I got an appointment to meet the Vice President of America as easily as I can get an appointment to meet any schoolmaster, confirmed my belief in the liberal and democratic ideas which live in the hearts of the American people.
Yes, you have much here that we don't have in Asia. So I was glad when someone asked me what gift we Japanese could give you. My gift to you would be composure. For example, I have been to tea parties very often where you talk and laugh very much. We have the tea ceremony, but it's different from yours in its purpose. The tea ceremony teaches composure. When you are composed, you can observe more delicately and you can think more deeply. Art has become a part of life in Japan. We don't have to go to a museum for it.
I have something quite different on my mind, and maybe something very surprising to you. As surprising as it was to me to be asked, how does it feel to be in a really democratic country? Of course, I agree that the United States is a democratic country, but maybe there is a danger to American democracy today, a danger which can most easily be seen by somebody from outside. In Norway, we learned during the last war what it meant to be afraid to speak our opinions. We have felt the horror of being gagged, and we never want to feel it again. Just because we haven't always had freedom, because we've had to fight for it, we have learned to love our freedom. But we cannot keep our freedom by restricting it. Since I came to the United States, I've heard and seen a lot of things that I don't understand. I've read proposals for special concentration camps for subversives in the armed forces. On television, I heard a Senate investigating committee ask a person if she ever subscribed on a certain newspaper. I was with a boy who didn't dare to go to a Russian movie because his father worked in the State Department. I don't understand this, but I'm glad I live in a country where such things don't happen.
I wonder if we could sum up now by telling you the thing which is most on our mind and which we'd most like to tell you on this our last day with you in America. I would like to tell you this. Do not worry too much about what people in other countries think about you. Whatever you do, there will be some criticism. If you leave your soldiers in Europe, to take an example, there will be some people who will say that you are imperialists. If you take your soldiers away, other people will say that you are abandoning us cowardly. The people I like best in America were those who are interested in our criticisms, were capable of keeping their beliefs strong, and were not moved and did not have their beliefs fall apart under our criticisms. This fundamental belief, as I understand it, is based on enlightened self-interest, on the idea that every country is responsible for the others on the world now, and that every country can and should be free. As long as you stick to this ideal, I'm sure you'll be able to live up to your role of world leadership.
These 3 months in America have given me something which I might not have found in the whole world all through my life. I have learned about the political world which I have never been really interested in before. Almost my whole heart is full of satisfaction and gratefulness. But there is still a little dark corner of disappointment left. The first time we got together as a group, I was so scared. Everybody seemed to speak only about politics, the war problems, the rearmament of Japan, the recognition of Great China, and McCarthy. I thought I would never be able to join in with the group because the ideas of my own, which I carried from my homeland, were never mentioned. I have had to put them all aside in order to follow the group. But now I have a chance to open my mind to you all. We all seem to look and talk about the far future and intrude into the work of our elders. I think you all remember one of Aesop's tales about the dog with a piece of meat in his mouth. The dog crossed the stream and seeing the big reflection of the meat in the water, he dropped the piece of meat and jumped into the water to get the reflection of it. The result is that he lost both things. Why don't we now look and do our own duty? I know that discussion about politics is useful, but don't behave too old for our age. Why did we forget the question, what can I, as a student, do to help my people and my country, to join hands with other countries? I say, do your duties the best you can with all your thought and strength. If you are students, try to be the best students. If you are scouts, try to be the best scouts. If you are friends, try to be the best friends. We all know what is good and bad. So do your best in your best duties, and everything which is best will follow step by step to the biggest best thing in the world peace.
In my school in Japan, I learned only about the material side of America, not about the spiritual side. Here I have seen that in America, Christianity is playing a big role. How long American people who are always rushing around keep completely quiet in church? In America, people make effort to satisfy their wants, but in Asia, people make effort to have the self-control to become free from want. In America, each individual is so important. I felt so terrible when I realized how different we are. I cannot decide for myself who I will marry. Living with American families, I noticed that mothers here always try to make their children independent.
About 1 month ago, all the group was down in Washington together. We had a lot of experiences there, met the president, had lunch in the Congress, and so on. But I'll have to admit that what made the strongest impression on me was just one little placard I saw outside a church building with the words, "The Baptist church is being repaired, so we're having our services in the Jewish temple." That was all. The placard said so little, and yet it said so much. It told that here were people who were different in their ideas, but who respected each other, and who were concerned about other people's chances to express their particular feelings. I think that is the most important thing it is possible to learn. I don't think it is necessary that people agree. I don't even find it necessary that they always understand each other. What really counts is that everybody can tolerate ideas different from his own, and not only tolerate them, but be willing to fight for the right of the other fellow to express his opinions.
To be a good citizen of a country, one has to understand its problems and strive for the solutions that will be in the interest of that country. To be a good citizen of the world, one has to do the same thing, namely, try to understand the world's problems, which are many and disastrous, and look for the solutions that are best for the world as a whole. Now, these solutions might seem contrary to the interest of his own country. And it is here that the sincerity of the world's citizen is tested, whether he should neglect his country's interest to consider the interest of the world, or whether he should do the other way around. A real good citizen, however, should be able to conciliate between both interests. That will require a great deal of broad-mindedness on his part. Broad-mindedness which I think could be best acquired in the high school education. He should have a sense of respect and even love for other people and races. Just as he loves his country and her history, he should have the same sympathy toward other countries. Now, the way to acquire this quality is to learn about other people. Learn about their history, language, and way of life. Just try to understand how these people came to be as they are now. Don't compare them with you. Just try to see how they make mistakes, and you will understand why and how they try to justify their mistakes. Just see them as they are. Just see us as we are. That is all any of us want. Thank you.